We have two options with my constant throat clearing that I am not going to be able to stop doing.
Sure.
And one of them is muting the Discord, and then you still get it in my Audacity.
I am perfectly capable of handling any throat noises anybody makes during editing.
Okay.
It's an occupational hazard.
Okay, because Jaffe was saying that it was a problem when I started switching over to the...
I think at one point I missed one of them in a bonus credit, and he was like, that never can happen again.
Yeah. So, yeah.
What? Why? Who cares? Well, I mean, I slightly care. I suppose,
it's really annoying to hear.
Some people care quite a bit.
It's really annoying to hear.
That's terrible, because I brought a whole bottle of Listerine with me for this recording, and I'm going to be gargling every 15 minutes without fail.
I'm a really rare condition, okay?
Yeah.
Dost thou require a new ally, or mayhaps a resurrection instead? This is episode 362 of Insert Credit Show, an audio magazine featuring your horrible buzzer, Key Gray. Thanks for sending it in. I'm your guest host, Esper Quinn, filling in for Alex Jaffe, and the last song from a video game that I listened to outside of a video game was a live performance of Snake Eater on YouTube.
Wow. Yeah, I was just thinking about how. By the way, I'm Frank Cifaldi, and before I answer that question, memory popped into my head that I think we all went to the E3 where Metal Gear Solid 3 was, and got that CD single of Snake Eater that was presented in a 12-inch LP sleeve.
Yes, I forgot about that.
That is something that I did occasionally listen to in my car at the time. I did not keep it in mint condition. I listened to it in my car. Haven't heard that song in a long time. The last video game song I listened to outside of its original video game context. Once in a while, I put the Sonic Mania soundtrack on again in my car. And I have to imagine that the last one was Act 2 of Studiopolis, which is usually where I end up.
It's a good one.
I'm Brandon Sheffield. Yes. Okay. Sorry. I forgot what we were doing. I'm Brandon Sheffield. What is the last one that I listened to? So I actually do a fair amount of just listening to playlists of video game music because it's kind of good for backgroundy while working sort of stuff because there's no lyrics in it, etc. I'm trying to see what is the last one on my desktop. The last one I listened to, apparently, because it's still up, is Ronnie's theme from the Sega Dreamcast Snow Surfers soundtrack. Now, I don't remember what that sounds like.
Ronnie probably does.
But apparently that was the last thing in this. I was listening to Alpha's video game drum and bass mix is what I was listening to.
Shout outs to Alpha.
So that was not intentional a choice that I made, but that's the real answer of the last one. But, if I were to choose, it would probably be something like Bomberman Hero or, one of those Jun Chikumas.
Throw that on.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I have something else.
Yeah.
Which I was considering being a recommendation, and then I decided it wasn't quite good enough to recommend, but I did write it down. So, Sari Kobayashi, who is the Panzer Dragoon Saga composer and Orta and other things, she also composed the music for Sylvan Tale on the Game Gear, which is, as longtime listeners of the show know, is a game that I like a lot. And she, I guess back in 1995, did an arrangement of it for her coworkers using the Panzer Dragoon instruments, basically.
Oh, I didn't know about this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's on YouTube. It only has 200 views. Yeah, it only has 141 views as of right now, including the one that I just added to it. It starts off like the first minute and a half, you're like, heck yeah, let's Panzer Dragoon this Sylvan Tale. But then as it goes along, it gets a little more generic, and so it didn't become a full recommend. But y'all should know about it, and so we'll put it in the links there.
And if you like the Game Gear and you don't know this game, you're probably one of those people who only plays games that you played when you were children.
Owned. Yeah. Well, moving on from that, we have a guest in here today, someone familiar to Insert Credit, game designer, journalist, and author of the new book, Every Game I've Finished. Mathew Kumar is here.
Yes, it's me. The question was the last piece of video game music that I listened to without it being part of the game, right?
Correct.
So that is going to be related to the fact that recently, not too recently, I started playing Yakuza 4. And Yakuza 4 has two versions. They have the remastered version and the original version for PlayStation 3. But if you get the remastered version, they removed an actor from it because he
did drugs or something, probably
small amount of cocaine or something like that, right? Like, and so I'm always like, well, I like to see the original version. Maybe that performance is better because I have this weird thing where I really like the original PS2 versions of Yakuza, the first one, because the guy who does Detective Date in English has this weird sort of like hangdog voice that I just always stuck with me. That I always think of the character as having that voice. So I'm like, maybe I'll like this guy's performance better. But you get this massive bonus if you play the PlayStation 3 version, which is the game has to install. And while it installs, it plays a vocal version of the song For Faith, which is like the main theme, but it's only one version of it that has the vocals. And it installs for like 27 minutes and it plays this 3-minute long song just in a loop the whole time while showing you the main characters. And at first you're like, yeah, this song's pretty good, but it's like a joke, right? Where the more times it's repeated, the funnier you think it is. By the end, I was like, this is the greatest fucking song I've ever heard in my entire life. So the minute I had finished installing it, I was like straight on Spotify. I was like, I'm gonna listen to this for another fucking hour. Like it's, and the thing is like the big like lyric in it is, the selfish deed is not freedom, which I just think is just like by the end I was like, that's so deep, man. That is so deep. that is the selfish deed. That is not freedom. Like if the next Ninja credit doesn't start with Jaffe or everybody saying the selfish deed is not freedom, or possibly ending that way, I'm gonna be very disappointed because we need it on a shirt basically.
I have to go get a PS3 now out of storage and play Yakuza.
Yeah.
So this is exciting. I'm guest hosting. Thanks for having me on. Jaffe is out on assignment right now. He'll be back next week, but this is the first time I get to write all of my own questions.
Oh.
Except for this first one, which Merritt K wrote.
Right.
What are some of the most interesting bootleg or knockoff consoles?
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, should I go first? Because I have the answer that just...
I will say, not only did Merritt point out that this is mostly for Frank, but also said, for example, the Pegasus, if that's where you're going.
Well, Pegasus is not that interesting, but let's talk about the Pegasus.
Not that interesting, but it is a classic.
Yeah, so the Pegasus is a clone of the, I'd say technically of the Famicom, but the NES is the same hardware, but it's the same 60-pin circuitry on the cartridges, and it's just a clone straight up of the Famicom. But it was, in Poland, a very successful console in the days when video game companies couldn't sell their stuff there.
Yeah, it was the Nintendo in Poland.
Yeah, absolutely it was.
I talked to so many people over there who are like, yeah, the Pegasus was was the console I played in my childhood. Later I learned what the NES was, but the Pegasus, and and the 151 games I
think they pronounced it Pegasus when I was there.
Yeah. And I went to a retro game cafe in Warsaw, and it was just Pegasus consoles, and like, that was what they had.
Yeah.
And there was no like, they also had like FIFA on PS3 or something like that. But yeah, Pegasus like stretched out to 16:9 Famicom games. That was the retro game cafe. I was like, oh man.
And I think the sort of like canonical Pegasus came with a very particular multi-cart, and like that is what classic games are to Polish people.
That was the thing that I found most fascinating, is the random curation of those multi-carts becomes like the thing
catalog.
It informs the game design ideas of your youth. People in Poland who are 30 or 40 years old, they grew up knowing about very specific games, and sometimes very specific versions of games, because sometimes there's a hack got in there or whatever. And it's neat to kind of try to force a connection between that and the current state of the Polish game industry and what kinds of games they make. I don't know if there's a real one, but every time I think about it, I want that connection to exist.
Well, yeah, they all played like Battle Tank or whatever on this thing. Just the common, like the Circus Charlie.
Just gets picked up as an e-sport over there or something.
By the way, I love informing people about this. It's just very delightful that Circus Charlie, the Konami game, came out on the Famicom. It's very common to find multi-carts where they just read the title screen font and misread it as Circus Chablis. And Circus Chablis is just a really delightful title for that game, and it's just what I call it now. All right, let's go into NES clones because this is sort of my area of weird interest. In the I think late 80s, the first sort of clone chips of the Famicom started coming out, and that's how you see things like the Pegasus and the Phantom in Brazil or the Dandy in Russia are kind of the famous ones. But that technology just continued being utilized for decades because it was just the default cheap computer chip in like the toy industry. So for example, I mean, in China, there's a really famous series of computers, like keyboard computers that inside are just straight up a Famicom, and literally Jackie Chan endorses them and is in the commercials and stuff. Super interesting stuff.
Yeah, it had like edutainment and things.
Yeah, they had typings. Well, I don't know about edutainment. It was more like there was, word processors and things like that.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, there might have been some educational, like English learning kind of stuff.
I just remember the ads were like, parents.
Yeah,
your children can use this to learn.
Right, they're learning how to use a computer, and exactly. I got really into what you might call plug and plays that use the NES. So starting in about 2003-ish, which is when the Famicom patent expired. I don't know if it's a coincidence. I've never really chased up on that. A lot of these sort of controllers that have games built in started appearing in the US. I think a lot of us remember these things. You still see them sometimes. And a lot of those were NES inside. And, most of those you might find in like a random mall kiosk were just basically the equivalent of that Pegasus multi-card, just bootleg Famicom stuff. But a lot of the more legit companies like Majesco and Excalibur Electronics and others were commissioning new games for the NES that only ever existed in these plug and play things. A lot of them are trash, but some of them get really weird. One that I always bring up is that Majesco did a Konami Arcade Classics one that has I think 3 or 4 actual Konami games from the Famicom era, just straight up in there, but then 3 brand new ports. It's like Frogger, Scramble, and something else. So Frogger on the NES came out in 2003. I think that's really weird.
Frogger specifically comes out really late on a lot of it's the last
Majesco again with Majesco because Majesco had the license. So Majesco,
it's the last game on last official game on a lot of platforms.
Super Nintendo is the one I'm thinking of with that, and it almost happened with Game Gear as well. Another really, really interesting one is it's a really early Famicom plug and play. It doesn't have a name. It just has a part number, and it's only in France. And it was this guy was working at a developer, and they were sort of given this tech, and they're like, can we make games for this? And he took his own Commodore 64 games from the mid 80s and wrote essentially a Commodore 64 emulator for the NES and packaged it in this plug and play and put his old games in it. I find that really fascinating. That one's not dumped yet. I did send one to someone who could read the chips, but he had trouble. But my actual favorite, this is the actual answer to Merritt K's question. If you Google image search right now, you'll find it. One word: Z-Dog, Z-D-O-G. Z-Dog is an enhanced NES clone, because this happened too. They would take the NES structure, but add a little bit of enhancements to it, like more colors per sprite kind of thing. The Z-Dog, I think you're all probably seeing it. It is a plush dog.
No, I'm not, because as you may recall, searching doesn't work anymore. So, I
just Google image search Z-Dog, and it's the first
We'll also have it in the video version of the show and the show notes.
I found it.
So Z-Dog is a plush dog that comes with one controller, and he's wearing a backpack. Might be hard to see. The backpack actually contains the guts of the console. See, it's already the best console design of all time. It's a plush dog.
Yeah.
And inside is a brand new collection of 50 kind of mini games for the enhanced NES, starring Z-Dog about his life. And there's sort of I don't want to say meta narrative, but there's sort of an achievement structure in there as well, with all 50 of the weird micro games. And they're all done by Hummer Team, who I think some of us here know. Hummer Team was the studio that did a lot of the unofficial fighting game ports for the Famicom back in the day, like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. This is their console, and with an original character, and it's really interesting and sweet and rare, and no one has one. but it's wonderful.
We're way past buzzer here. I do want to get one last thing in. There is apparently, when searching for Z-Dog, a James Cameron's The Avatar: The Way of Water character named Z-Dog. So
after the console,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I assume he's a big Z-Dog fan.
Yeah.
Mathew, Kumar, any personal interests or experience with bootleg consoles?
I mean, I do have a personal experience of them, but I couldn't name any of them.
Sure, same
and I think
here.
it's one of the interesting things about, I mean, like what Frank does in terms of like, try to collect this type of history. One of the major things I find is that the collection of history in terms of like Southeast Asian like game culture is like, it's impossible to find, right? So I partially grew up in Malaysia, and like my strongest sort of memories of being there, because I was a tween and then a teenager when I was there, and going to even the large like department stores, you would find the game section just completely full of like 100 different bootleg Famicoms, right? And then like every single multi-cart. It's funny that you mentioned Battle City earlier, because like that just to me is just like the friggin' like multi-cart game.
It's the default multi-cart game somehow.
Like
yeah.
I don't even think like it's like, do Americans even play that game? Like it's like I
it
assume
didn't come out here. Yeah.
Yeah, but everybody in like Southeast Asia, like India, I'm assuming China plays, like it's just like they all know the original Bomberman, the Battle City, like all the things that had no mapper chips or whatever, so just were shoved on these 50 cards.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And you'd go, okay, well, I've played Battle City. Why don't I play Battle City 2? And you're like, oh, well, that's just Battle City again. They'd be like, well, okay, I'm going to play City Attack. That's going to be something. Nope, that's Battle City again. Okay, so eventually one of these games has to be something. Like, that is my overwhelming experience of Famiclones, was like, a cousin would have them, one would be kicking around the house, you'd be like, let's play something, and then just playing nothing but crappy different versions of fucking Battle City, hoping to find something that, because this is like the early 90s by this point, right? So I'm thinking like, I'm going to play something good eventually, because I know what NES games are like, and they're not all from 1983, but not for me, apparently.
Understood. Well, moving on to question 2 here.
I want to do a real quick one.
This is a really good topic. I think we're in. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Just a quick one is that I really like the clones of less popular consoles. So there's a few PC Engine clones, not that many, and they're not super impressive necessarily, but it's just neat that they got made, and it's mostly Hong Kong and Taiwan, and they had to ape an entirely different form factor than the NES and do the cards and everything. So I thought that was neat. But my favorite thing to come out of that is the Italian and Korean PC Engine to arcade clones. Some of them used an actual PC Engine, but some of them were clones, and they would have the PC Engine Hue card in like this cigarette box looking size of thing, and you would swap the game out with that. And it on the board, they just had a timer, and the timer, like, you could set how long the timer was, and once it got down to 5 minutes, then you had to put another coin in, and that was
it would say arrivederci.
Exactly.
I was really hoping it would pop the cartridge out like a toaster.
Yeah, just eject it across the room. Yeah, no, that all happens inside of the arcade cabinet, so you wouldn't see it. I do actually have one of those boards, but it is just a PC Engine, like slapped to a PCB with a bunch of wires spinning around. It's pretty neat. But anyway, that's
Sounds cool. It's a way to get those games out there, I guess.
Should I slip in one more final quick
Please, go ahead.
trivia? All right. So the Phantom is the famous one in Brazil. I think a lot of people dismiss it as a pure bootleg thing, but actually everything was done on the up and up. And the official Phantom games by Gradiente, the company that manufactured and marketed the Phantom. All of those are officially licensed, but not from Nintendo. So there are official releases of like Activision NES games in Brazil that just have the Nintendo of America copyright stripped out like a bootleg, but they are official. And I think that's really weird.
So they're like licensed from Activision.
Yeah, so like Ghostbusters 2, Predator, stuff like that. Like those are official releases. Like they are licensed.
That Nintendo never touched, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Right on. Well, hey, thank you for sending that question in, Merritt. Got some good stuff out of that.
And I'm going to squeeze one last thing.
Why not? Yeah, go for it.
Because they were
this
on
is
the
the rest
up
of
and
the
up.
episode.
Because they were on the up and up, and they became the dominant console in Brazil, Nintendo essentially struck a deal with them. And they splintered off into a company called Playtronic and became the official Nintendo distributor until the late 90s. So they started as a quote unquote bootleg thing, but became the official Nintendo for a long time in Brazil.
That's going legit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Starting legit and then becoming more legit. And also, I'm completely convinced they also did bootleg games under another label.
Speaking of Nintendo, it is time to carry on a new segment from our previous guest host, Ash Parrish. What the hell is going on at Nintendo? We're going to start actually by going back to part 2, the online network test, which has been leaked as being some kind of Minecrafty, Robloxy, MMO-ish type thing. Is Nintendo finally actually going to do something big online?
Well, I guess it depends on your definition of online, because you could argue that they already have with Pokemon Go and things like that.
That's not Nintendo.
Yeah, that's their IP.
It is their IP, but there were there were others in that with
But
their IP.
those weren't Nintendo products. That's
they
like
weren't
saying that
Nintendo
Mario
made.
underwear means that Nintendo is going into underwear. No, it's just
I was thinking like the kind of closest big thing is Splatoon 3 in terms of like Nintendo first party online stuff.
Yeah. Does it mean that they're going to go into it? Maybe. Maybe.
Sure. I don't expect us to have answers necessarily, but I mean, there's a long history of Nintendo not being able or not wanting to do this stuff.
Yeah.
But this seems like it's got all the juice.
They've always wanted to skirt the edges of it and do things related to the internet without having to go all the way. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I haven't read much about this though, so I shouldn't really.
I haven't either. I read just enough to go, great, me and Brandon were right.
Yeah,
it's more
exactly.
of that kind of thing, and not like, oh, they must be testing GameCube for some reason. Come on, fools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, what it suggests to me, knowing Nintendo, is doing that's cheap now. That's how Nintendo operates. They wait until it's like cheap and easy to do something, and then they make a game out of it. So it must be that like the server infrastructure stuff needed for that is cheap and easy now, which probably means it's blockchain, right? I mean, it's got to be blockchain.
Probably NFTs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that they use this experience as a test bed for making a store that works. Because I actually it sounds like a joke, but and it kind of is a joke, but it is also real because their store, obviously it doesn't work, and it's very, very bogged down. Their own console can't run it.
It's crazy that is one of the most insane things about the Switch, right? Is that you can run perfectly, you can run games on it, right? But the minute you try to open the store, which is just like basically opening a web page, your Switch just goes, I have to die. Like, this is not possible. What you're asking me to do is not possible for a game console to do. Like, it takes so long, and I don't even like it. I don't even know why. Like, what possible infrastructure problems are they having with their store? But then, actually, to be fair, PlayStation Store is pretty shitty as well. I haven't used PlayStation 5 at all.
But it can load
the 4
stuff
and the
up.
3 was terrible.
PS5 can load things. You need the power of the PS5 in order to load multiple
a web page,
multiple JPEGs simultaneously. I think my assumption is that Nintendo is it's just trying to load too much in too small of a RAM package. They assigned a certain amount for the store, and it's just not enough. A certain amount of system RAM is dedicated to the store, and it's not enough. It's my guess. I don't know. Especially when they also maybe have the game running in the background or something.
Yeah,
like
I was going to say there's probably there's probably not a lot of operating system memory allocated for Nintendo, and it's probably one of those things also where if third parties try to get into that memory, they get bounced from logic, but Nintendo probably does it all the time. They're pretty classic Nintendo move.
When you're the first party, you get first party access.
Yeah, but I don't know that this means anything big. This doesn't feel, again, I don't know. Maybe I just am some kind of strange Nintendo apologist, even though I don't really interact with their products so much anymore. But I just don't find this strange. I don't find this to be not Nintendo. Like this feels like a really natural evolution of stuff going back to the Wii to me, and I agree that like it feels like the next step after Splatoon 3, which had sort of a social interaction lobby and stuff, which itself was maybe the next step off of whatever the Wii U thing was, where you could draw pictures and things like that. This just feels like, more of that.
I feel like if it weren't Nintendo, nobody would bat an eye about it.
Well, it probably wouldn't be very good if it weren't Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, as Frank's saying, like it's very cumulative for the way Nintendo works, right? They very slowly go into each thing. So like they've proven now that people are willing to pay a Nintendo subscription, right? People will pay Nintendo, and they've also proven that people will keep adding on to that subscription if they want, right? So like you go from just the basic one to the one with Mega Drive to the one that has Animal Crossing in it, Mario Kart 8. They've also proven actually with Mario Kart that people will just like play one version of the game they've released forever, right? Like it's going to be very hard for them to make a Mario Kart 9 at this point, it feels like. So I think they're just thinking like, maybe with the next Switch or whatever, we're going to dump out this thing. It's going to be another $5 on top of your Switch thing. And then you're just like locked into our ecosystem rather than the Fortnite ecosystem or really it's Fortnite or nothing at this point, really, Roblox or Minecraft, right? So those are the three big ones, right, for kids, right? So they're thinking like, people already get given a Switch, just lock them into our thing, into the thing that other people will do, and don't charge. Like, I don't even think Nintendo will do loads of microtransactions. Probably they'll probably just have this like this. Either it might even be a thing that you buy outright, which I know famously just didn't work for Sony, but like it's a totally different value proposition for people the way Nintendo works.
This could definitely be like a Miiverse turned up to 11 type thing, where it's like, oh, I have seen one leaked clip and there's like a grappling hook where imagine Minecraft with grappling hooks. It seems like, what if there were just Mii's running around here? That'd be fine.
Yeah, Nintendo's like, so sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I was actually going to go back to something you said. In terms of adding services. That brings us to what the hell is going on in Nintendo Part 3. Nintendo Music got announced yesterday. I don't know if you've seen this.
Yes. What was Part 2?
Part 2 was this online service.
What was Part 1?
Part 1 was Alarmo.
Oh, Part 1 was a prior episode. Okay,
correct. This is a segment Ash came up with and insisted was a segment.
I just thought we had multiple parts. We do have multiple parts in this one. I was just
correct. Well, we're going back to Part 2, which was in the last episode.
We're creating an anthology slowly.
I get it.
We got a wiki going. We're working on it.
Part 3 is the music thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which does not have most of Nintendo's music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why doesn't have to?
No.
Did you look at it?
Nah.
I downloaded it, but then I realized I don't have Switch Online because I don't use my Switch ever.
All I know is that all people have been doing is just playing the Wii Shop music for...
It could have just been a Wii Shop music app.
Yeah, basically, like, my understanding is you can set a song to loop for, like, an hour, so people are just doing that, right? It's just lo-fi hip-hop beats to study to.
They should get that Yakuza 4 song in there.
They absolutely should.
I thought that was like a fine idea, the looping thing, but you can only loop it for a set amount of time. I should be able to just loop the 5 a.m. Animal Crossing theme indefinitely.
I think it should get like a half second faster every time you loop it.
Just the sonic drowning music starts playing at some point.
It just gets slightly faster, and it's imperceptible at first, but by the time 2 hours rolls around, you're at like 1.5 speed. You're like, something's wrong.
So are we going to get YouTube copyright strikes now? Is that what's happening, or is there like
that's a good
reason?
question.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, probably.
I think the product's smart. I again don't think it's weird. I think Nintendo is it's kind of in a phase where they're looking backward and being like, okay, what do we very safely have and own forever that we can continue exploiting? I think we see that in the Nintendo Museum that is very focused on just first-party product and making those playable. So I think it makes sense. I think the features that they added are really smart. I've only seen the YouTube video. I haven't engaged with it myself, but the looping music stuff is just a nice little freebie that they already had because these songs have, an intro and then an infinite loop. and they already have that data that says, the exact I don't know what the music equivalent of frame is, but like the exact
loop point
part in the exact loop point. They already have that data, so just throw that in. It's now a feature, it makes people excited. I think the feature to have a no spoilers mode for the soundtrack is really interesting in that I don't think of Nintendo as being on top of like what fan culture wants. So I found that to be a really interesting feature to add in that is really smart and probably what people actually want. I think this thing's cool and there's no reason not to do it. And I think that it just adds to the value of having that subscription and keeping you locked into your weird Roblox Minecraft world thing that comes out later.
Yeah, to follow on what you're saying there, Frank, I think that what's going with Nintendo is, as you say, it's not weird. I think it just reflects. I'd be interested in which like people within the company are pushing this drive. But I think that like with like the theme parks and all these things, Nintendo has reached this point where they understand they have this sort of cultural position now, which is like, it was never at the level of Disney before, let's say, but now they are basically like, they're like, hey, we're basically Disney, right? We have all this culture across the last like 40 years that people like love and they want to interact with. Now, why is the guy with a YouTube channel getting the money from our music, right? Why is the guy with the bootleg t-shirt getting the money? Why, is they're just looking at ways, how
the
can
Bong
we
shop with the Mario Bong.
Yeah, right. So how do we concentrate all
Official
of that
Mario Bong
value in our own endeavors, right? Like I think the museum is a perfect example of that. Like it's just like people don't even think it's that good, right? They're like, but it's just like people are going to go to that, and then they're going to go to Universal Studios Japan to go to the other thing as well, right? The music app is exactly the same thing. It's just like Apple, like everyone else, stay in our ecosystem. Just stay with us. Don't go anywhere else. We will protect you. We'll stroke your hair. We'll make you feel good. Look, it's the Wii Shop music. It's the Wii Shop music. You like that. Go to sleep. Sleep. Nothing bad's happening. That's just what they're doing.
There's never a moment of your day where you don't have to be Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine waking up to the fucking Nintendo sounds like I like Nintendo stuff well enough, but like everybody hates the noise in the morning. Like it's not possible to like it. Like, so if you wake up, you're like, oh, brilliant. It's the sound of Rosalina. Like I genuinely don't understand what type of human you are.
Apparently some people like the morning. I heard about this. I don't know if you knew this.
Sounds unlikely.
There's some people who they get up and they're just like fresh faced and they're like, time to greet the day. It's weird.
I think those people just naturally wake up, right?
Right, they might.
You know those people? The people have to wake up with an alarm. The alarm is the worst sound you've ever heard. Like, if anything, the Nintendo alarm should like play like the sound of Astrobot or play the sound of the woman from
Master Chief waking you up.
Master Chief, yeah. He's like, wake up. I know you think my name's Master Chef, but it's not. It's Chief.
Moving on. Question 4. At this point in your life, for you personally, what would it take to get you to play more video games?
Oh, that's pretty easy. Less work, more time.
I figured that would probably be the answer. So this is kind of a roundabout way of asking, are you comfortable with your current amount of game playing you do?
Well, I think so. I would like to do more. On top of the somewhat glib work answer, I get intimidated to start a new game because I'm like, okay, I probably have to play for 2 hours to get this game going. Especially if I'm like, okay, here's a Metaphor ReFantazio. That's an RPG. I'm gonna have to play it for a while, or else I'm gonna immediately. If I play it for 30 minutes, I'm gonna watch a cutscene and then I'm gonna forget what's happening, and then I'm gonna have to do that again later. And I don't, it's not designed for a busy person. It's designed for someone to become engrossed in. So yeah, more time would reduce that barrier, but maybe not all the way, because that barrier's been up for quite a long time.
So then to go back to the original framing of the question, shorter games, is that
maybe get to the game bit faster is one thing I really liked about Nier, and I could be misremembering, is that in the original Nier, you started doing action stuff with all your weapons and all your power-ups and everything. Power-ups is not the right, but you know what I mean. Like you had a good set of weapons.
Yeah, they give you pretty much all the actions you're going to be doing in a major way pretty early.
And in the very early sequence of the game, you're just fighting enemies, and then it goes into like the cutscenes about the story and all of that stuff. So I'm sort of already situated in what the game is before I have to watch 30 minutes of cutscenes.
I think that was unique to Nier, though. I feel like that's like every AAA game, isn't it? Like every AAA game, you start, you have all the powers, and then your guy trips over and all falls out of his pocket, and he's like, "Oh, I guess I have to collect these."
Yeah, every AAA game designer played Metroid Prime.
And right. But I get what Brandon's getting at is that Nier really does open with like, here's 30 seconds of cutscene, and then we're going to drop you in a battle with some guys.
Yeah, that's the it isn't the you have your powers, then you lose them. I mean, Symphony of the Night obviously that did that as well. It's a classic thing, but it's more that despite being a 3D large game that was an attempt at AAA at the time, it started to go straight to action, and then you got your big story and your all of
it's
that.
Intentionally bewildering you at first in terms of what's going on. You have no idea, but you're playing the game and it feels great.
Yeah, and I feel like there's got to be more clever ways to get you into the action faster. We really tried with Demon School. I don't know that we've got that. I think there's probably like 4 or 5 minutes before you're in a battle in Demon School, and then you have to watch more cutscenes to figure out more of what's happening. But someone was complaining about I forget what it was. It was a tactics RPG that came out, and they were like, I'm 45 minutes in here and I still haven't done anything, and I don't even know who these characters are to care about this world yet. That it's a classic complaint with JRPGs, and you do get it a little bit with AAA Western games sometimes as well. So yeah, just get to the if you can promise me somehow on the box that I'm going to get to the game part faster, then I'll be less intimidated to start.
I think Brandon's answer almost relies on the ability to even want to start a game.
Sure.
I'm having a hard time committing to a movie these days. Like a movie feels like, well, I don't have time for this. This is too long. I want to do other things. And
I can't look at my phone for the next 2 hours.
Right. I mean, literally. And so most video games to me feel worse than that to start up. And I also know logically that I can watch a movie every day. I can fit that in. I know logically that I can just start a AAA game and play a couple hours, probably have a good time, decide if I want to continue and be fine. I know that logically, but there is a mental barrier of some kind. And I think the word that comes to mind as I'm thinking this through is structure. I would need some kind of structure. I need some kind of reason to play games other than, theoretically I will be like creatively fulfilled or something, like that's
so
just not enough for me anymore.
Need.
I need them Chivos. I need to become a Chester Chivo.
I do play more games toward the end of the year because I judge some competitions, and also because I feel a responsibility to this show to have played enough games for the Game of the Year episode.
I wanted to say something sort of relates to what you're both saying in terms of like, I do think that it's actually a structure issue of the games themselves, right? And I think that ultimately relates to game length, right? If a game's only 10 hours, you can't make it take 5 hours for you just to play your first battle, right? So, and it kind of relates to, as you're saying, even being able to sit down and watch a movie, right, Frank? Like, is that people always say this. They're always like, people don't watch a 3-hour Martin Scorsese movie, but they watch a 10-hour TV show. Now, the reason for that is that television is the structure of how television works, right? Even if you put on an hour-long television show, television episodes, every episode is structured, has a beginning, middle, end. It has chapter breaks, essentially. Like, they have a format that allows people to go, I will stick on an episode of this. And because at the end of an episode, it goes boom, and you go, oh, I wonder what happens next, or something like that. Like, people then watch the next episode, right? Which is different from, like, I love, let's say, Tarkovsky's Stalker, right? But I could not sit my family down and go, let's watch this movie, because when they get on the train or whatever, everyone's going to be like, what are we watching, right? It's going to take, you're like, no, you have to sit with it. You have to breathe with it. You have to, like, it's just not going to work, right?
Internalize this.
And game developers ultimately, like, I have worked with an art designer and stuff like that. I don't know how well game studios and everything work in the concept of like, what is the structure that we are selling to the player to the audience and to make them get involved and to see them through to the end, right? I try and finish all my games, as my book explains, and the reason for that is because like it's very interesting to see how the whole project is, rather than just like a little part of it, you know, like it's more meaningful for me to see it all the way through. But most games, compared to say most TV shows, they just do not earn their length. They do not earn the time that you spend in them, and they don't from the very beginning, right? Because they don't put the effort in to draw you into the world, to make you enjoy. I actually find like all that AAA, like getting to the action straight away stuff, kind of cliche, lazy. I wouldn't mind if there was more story at the beginning, honestly. Like, it just has to be done in a way that draws you in, where you go, I have to see what happens next. And that's why I tend to like the things like even Yakuza 4, to talk about it again for some reason. Like, it's way too friggin' long, but every single character has a chapter, and it starts, as you play through each chapter, it starts to build into each thing. So obviously each chapter takes like 10 hours or something, but like as I get to the end of the chapter, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna play for the extra hour and finish the chapter off, right? Like, so that and then I feel really great because I've done something, I've finished a chapter, I can walk away. Like, those moments of success and everything need to be starting for the player immediately, and it can't be like achievement related, which are metagame parts. They should be like intrinsic to the process through the game, and that's what makes people want to actually play games. But too long didn't read. Every game should be 3 hours long. The end.
I like that. Real quick before we go to break, one last thing. I saw something on the forums I didn't really look into too much. Is Tommy Tallarico a backgammon champion now?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I don't care enough to really look into this.
Yeah, I'm kind of at that same level.
But he had a long story that he posted about how it was his new dream to become world champion at backgammon. And
because it was his dad's like final
dying wish or something. Which
like on his deathbed, his dad was like, son, there's only one thing I need you to do for me. It's get really good at backgammon quickly. Like, I mean,
so it was kind of,
if you had a clear goal like that.
Mathew, it feels like you upped your accent for
you got more Scottish.
My old man voice is very Scottish. Can't help it. Oh, son, I can't help it. I just need you to be so good at backgammon because it's just because when I grew up in the Gorbals, that's all we played. I mean, I know your name's Tallarico, but it should be Mick Tallarico.
So I guess
he won something.
Yeah, they did. They played it like as he was declining, and it was like the thing that helped them connect at that time, and so his father was like, "You're really good at this. You could become the best, and you should become the best." So that was what it was. Kind of sweet, but it's also he made it weird.
That's the beginning of the backgammon JRPG on the PC Engine.
Yeah, wow, what a redemption story.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Brand, but you're saying it does kind of make the whole story weird.
He made the whole story weird, yeah. But I think it was kind of like a sweet thing that his dad and he were doing together and whatever. And then Tommy Tallarico was like, and then I have to become the best. I have to do it. So he just made it strange.
Yeah, and you know, I don't want to piss on his grave. He's already dead, but Tommy Tallarico, I think, is a liar. And so when he says I became world champion, I assume that
he won something.
He won something, but it's not the actual thing that he's saying. So get back in your grave.
Yeah. Well, let's all think about what we can improve at during the break. We'll be right back.
I'm trying to think of things that would be like even funnier for his father to ask him to become the best in the world at. Son, you know that guy, the devil sticks. Do the devil sticks. I want you to be the best in the world at devil sticks.
That's how he becomes a world-class hacky sacker.
Yeah, hacky sack. I used to play it in the 60s. And I just really thought, you ever play California Games, actually? That's the best one in California Games.
If you really want to make me proud, son.
Become best at hacky sack in real life, Dad. No, in California Games. Get yourself on the Twin Galaxies forum.
Welcome back to Insert Credit. Real quick before we get to the dirtbag, Brandon, you had something you wanted to add to our last question.
Yeah, I realized that with Demon School, we were actually really trying to do what Yakuza does, and I think that one of the things they do super well there is your main objective is always up there and in your like upper right for you to or whenever you start the game back up, it's like get to the phone or whatever. Like the main objective is always something that you're aware of. And in our game, it's structured across days and weeks and times of day. So you have morning, evening, and night, and then you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the weekend, and then you have week 1, week 2, week 3. We built it around this problem of not having time to play games and have it in more digestible chunks. Now, as to whether I did a good job of leading you into the next scene, like I tried to create each scene with something interesting that would happen that would move the plot forward. When you have 160 main scenes, it's hard for that to be true. So some of them might be duds, but the idea was that you could play this game for 10, 15 minutes at a time and even just complete one little chunk of the day and go away and come back. And when you came back, it would remind you that you have to talk to so-and-so or go find this thing or whatever.
A very immediate, hey, here's what you can do right now.
Yeah, and I hope that will work. And I have no idea if it will because I haven't played through the whole game yet. I don't know if it's even any good. But yeah.
Good thing to admit on your podcast.
Yeah, I know. But I figured I should mention it because it is the Yakuza games that inspired us to do that. And I wonder if people will even think it's an interesting structure or just feel very normal about it and just be like, here it is. That's what it is. Anyway, the end.
Well, now that we are back, thank you for that. We're going to go ahead to our dirt bag, which is where you, the listener or viewer, can submit questions for our panel by subscribing at patreon.com/insertcredit. You'll also get bonus episodes, which might feature more chats with me and Jaffe going forward, since people seem to enjoy that.
Nice.
This week's question comes from our returning patron, Alex Jaffe, who asks, what is the strongest emotion that video games can produce?
Frustration.
Yeah, that seems obvious to me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's frustration.
Kind of a poor question from Jaffe. It's for done.
That's why it was in the dirt bag.
Not as usual stock.
Yeah, was it feeling? Was it emotion? What did he say?
The strongest emotion that video games can produce.
So is frustration an emotion?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Guess it is. Just trying to think back to that Princess Peach game, and that's all the emotions that there are.
The core of all human psychology. Yeah, it's a shade of anger, I'd say.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think frustration is the easy one. Anger is another for a certain kind of a person that doesn't have a lot of patience.
It's tough because that really is kind of the strongest emotion that humans get. So the fact that video games are very good at doing.
I mean, I think you can be equally as sad or joyous as you can be angry or frustrated. It's rarer, but especially with video games, it's just really easy to evoke frustration.
And in fact, it's hard not to sometimes.
Right. I mean, and sometimes you do it on purpose, but usually you don't. And it's really easy for a game to just make presumptions about a player's understanding of mechanics or things like that, and cause a very extreme amount of frustration and make me stop playing them.
Is obsession an emotion? Like, I mean, it's not really, but like when I think of like an emotional state, let's say like. A perfect example of like a super heightened emotional state is having a crush, right? When you have a super big crush on someone, you just never stop thinking about them. Everything you do, you think about them, and you have this heat in you, right, about them. But like, or if I was like, so let's say like when you start playing like the new Animal Crossing or something, like there's all these different things to do in the game, and you spend the whole time not playing it, just thinking about these things you need to do. It's kind of like you have these heavy like crush, almost like experiences with a game that you get really into at the beginning. So I could say that's maybe an interesting sort of like take on it rather than just a positive one, because like frustration and anger are so easy to like go to, but like when something really captivates you and you can't stop thinking about it, whether that's actually an emotion or not, I don't know, but it's definitely like an emotional state that you're in.
Yeah, I would kind of put it in the negative camp, because when I get into that state, it's like with a free-to-play game and I need to make sure that I open my chests at the right time so that I have the minimum amount of time before I open the next one. And the way obsession manifests for me with video games tends to be like compulsion, kind of like Like,
yeah, it can lead to feeling exploited by the psychology of the thing.
yeah, but I definitely think that's a legit one, though it maybe not an emotion. It's definitely a one of the
It's so
big things that
related
games
to
can.
my internal monologue, I think, because like I have a constant running internal monologue, and some days I think like I have wasted so much of my life just thinking about something I'm going to do in a video game at some point in the future. Like I'll
Yeah.
lie in bed and my internal monologue will be like, oh, don't forget, you're going to want to do that mission and then that mission so you can get back to the other area. And it's
That
like,
sounds like stress.
how is that the use
kind
of my brain?
A kind of positive spin I can think on it is like, imagine you're 15 and discovering Minecraft for the first time. Like, you are going to get a pretty overwhelming sense of, if not like mind expansion and like, wow, video games can do this, then at least like whimsy and like, I want to explore this place. I want to do this thing. I feel like possibility is open to me. That's an emotion video games can do that other mediums can't do so much of, right?
I feel like something that games can do, and this is not an emotion, but better than other media, video games can have in jokes with you, the player. Like
that's interesting. They're interactive, yeah.
Yeah, like a dialogue between you as a player and the game where something could be really funny to you, but it wouldn't be funny to someone if you explained it to them, because it's very like in the world and in the experience of playing the game. I think that's neat. It's not an emotion, but it's adjacent.
It's something worth mentioning.
An official stance of the Insert Credit Show is that inside joke is not an emotion.
That's right.
That's we're going to get t-shirts made with that. So question 7, if you somehow wrote an essay for every game you've finished, what would you do with those?
I mean, if you're me, you would put them all online for a vanishingly small amount of people, and then you'd be like, fuck it, I'm going to put it into a book and then put it on Amazon and then try and hope people buy it.
What would you call that book?
I'd call it Every Game I Finished 14 to 24. Basically, it's got my name and and you can just Google it on Amazon, or you can go to my Ko-fi and you can buy it on PDF. And if you don't want to buy it
I think
from
it's Ko-fi.
Is it Ko-fi?
Yeah, it's like buy me a cup of coffee.
Because it's buy me a cup of coffee.
Oh yeah, because Kofi Annan started it, right? Like after he was done with the UN, he was
exactly
like,
right. Yes.
And you know what his favorite breakfast was, right?
No.
Coffee and Annan.
There you go.
So I think I stole that from Stuart Lee, but I do love it. Anyway, yeah, that's what I've done with it. Personally, and was it a good use of my time? I'd say probably not. But what I will say is that, see, when you start like playing games, right, they feel like a waste of time, right? Like, okay, you can get obsessed with them, you can spend your time lying in bed thinking, but you need to do this mission or that mission, right? But then when you write about them, you feel like, I'm doing something here. I'm like performing, using my critical faculties. I'm not just like passively absorbing a game. I'm actually like thinking about it. What does it do? And as time has passed,
picking up its in-jokes.
Yeah, picking up its in-jokes. And as time has passed, actually, and I've sort of like turned to playing older stuff, I found that it's more interesting to not like just go into easy nostalgia, right? Like I think that like too many of the people who are about retro games or they do the YouTube videos and stuff like that, it's just sort of like easy nostalgia. Like, hey, do you remember Ninja Gaiden? Right? Like that bird was annoying, right? Whereas like what's actually interesting, and I think Frank's obviously a huge proponent of this, is like the story behind the game, like the research and stuff. So like I was playing through the most recent Lamasoft sort of release from Digital Extremes, right? And like there's like Digital Eclipse. I always confuse them, so apologies, because they're the people who do Warframe, right? They're in London, Ontario.
Yeah, Warframe and Dark Sector on the
Digital
360.
Eclipse. Yeah. Anyway, because it doesn't sound like a retro. Anyway, it's not important. Playing through that, I was like, well, there's a lot of information here about Lamasoft, but there's just not enough for me. So then I like was able to like each game and then go online and just do more research. Archive.org is just one of the greatest websites that's ever existed, just for access to video game magazines and stuff that I don't have. Like, and then like being able to like, triangulate to like find like old game guides and things like that for some of the games. Like all that type of stuff is like sort of like it becomes like a living history, right? The same type of thing that they're trying to do with their documentaries. But there's just even more of that stuff out there. And then being able to write a little article about it and go into detail about this or that thing, or say I'm looking at old Famicom games or something, and you pick up like, oh, this guy developed it, but he also did this, or this sort of the classic problem that anyone does this stuff, right? Where it's like every single game you write about references Terra Droga. Like there is not a game they write about. We're like, and Terra Droga made this happen, right? Like there's just so much interesting stuff to like learn. And from my perspective, if you're giving me the soapbox here, the reason that like I like do this and have put a book out about it is that I just don't think that in the modern age there exists a proper culture of criticism for video games, which exists in the same way or exists for most other creative arts, right? So there is actually a culture of criticism for obviously film. It's existed for as long as film has existed, right? And it's not just being like, hey, did you see the latest Marvel movie? It's good or whatever. This and the same way I don't think that writing about games should just be, do you remember Ninja Gaiden? The bird was annoying. There should be, I'm looking at the history of this game. I'm talking about how it actually feels to play it, more detail, a sort of a more educated sort of take on it. And people would say, well, maybe games is a more low culture. But that culture criticism exists for television, right? Like you could read Clive James on television. He has a book out or had a book out about that. Like music, there's rock music, pop music, punk music. It all has this culture of like actually deep criticism that I think should exist. And I thought like, for the most part, there aren't like books that they're just collections of essays on video games. And I was like, I'm just gonna put it out and just see how that goes. Like, I think it should exist. If I can make it exist, why not? Who's gonna stop me? No one. Turns out, no one has stopped me.
What I've liked about your stuff has sort of been more related to like not all. I wouldn't say all of it is criticism because some of it is like I didn't like this. I don't know why, but the it kind of goes back to the original insert credit mission of games being a subjective art form, where the more of those that you write that I read, I know you as a person, but I think even a person who doesn't know you as a person could read these and understand what your taste is, and then understand whether they would also like this game based on how you've written about it. And to me, that's been kind of the valuable thing looking at your every game I've finished. Like sometimes you'll come to a game that people have been recommending me for a long time, and I just never got around to it for the last 35 years or whatever, and I never looked at it. And reading you talk about it and the things you were frustrated with about it, or the things that you liked about it, or whatever, will help me to mentally check it off of my backlog and be like, I don't need to play this, or I'm going to move this up because the way he's talking about it makes it sound like something that I would actually enjoy. I don't know. I feel like probably insert credit listeners more than most may have this. I don't know if everyone has it, but when I play games, I feel like I have to analyze it somehow. I feel like I have to find what's the good thing about it, or what's the like I have to.
Why do I feel this way about it?
Yeah, I turn it into work a little bit almost every time. And so if some of that work can be done by you for me, then that's really handy. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a value in it because some folks also feel this need to finish everything, and it's like a compulsory need to finish everything even if they're not enjoying it. And I might recommend this the most for those people so that they can see through to the end of the experience and then maybe be like, okay, I can quit or something like that. I don't know. There's a lot of fun stuff in there. So mine's coming tomorrow. I got the slow shipping, but I'll enjoy it at that time.
So the official stance is that criticism may involve subjectivity, which seems pretty radical to me.
I want to answer the question before we move on.
Please.
Please buy Mathew's book. But I just want to say that if I had a back catalog of content that was just sitting around, I would make an app and allow you to loop it up to 60 minutes.
All right. With that, we're going to go into the lightning round, which is name design. In name design, I'm going to give you a bunch of names based around a theme, and you are all going to, as quick as you can, design a game for these names. And this week, they're going to be Magic the Gathering cards because I'm me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You like that magic?
I do. It's a whole thing. All right, let's get started. First one off the bat, Chaos Orb.
Ooh. I'm immediately picturing a Commodore 64, like overhead, there's a maze, you're an orb, it kind of bounces off of things.
Yeah.
That's as far as I've gotten, though.
That's exactly what I immediately thought of Whizball,
That's the whole game.
the sensible game, which is just exactly that. It's side on, I think, Whizball, but yeah, you're a ball creating chaos by bouncing around, and it should definitely be on the C64.
Yeah,
love it.
And there's like a parallax effect.
Parallax,
where it looks like there's a bunch of 3D stuff on the bottom.
There's gotta be.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, there's dragons too. Okay.
Moving on, Worm Coil Engine.
I like it. I like it. I like Worm Coil
It's
Engine.
WURM for what it's worth, but you can go either way.
And that was an NES game, Worm with a U.
Okay.
Ah.
With a weird anime one.
Yeah, that's one I wanted to play.
I think you'd
probably
enjoy
play
it. It's really
Yeah.
interesting. Let's just talk about that. So it's a kind of a bad side scroller,
Yeah.
and then it becomes a bad JRPG boss battle.
Mhm.
But the fact that those two things are combined is really interesting. And part of the JRPG boss battle thing is talking to the rest of your crew, trying to find the boss's weakness. So there's almost like a puzzle element to it as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
So you get an engine in there somewhere, it'll all work out. Next is
No. We can
Oh,
still
wow,
we can
yeah,
still
all
try
right.
to answer this one.
So I think it's Worm Coil Engine, and it's
Oh,
a
okay.
sequel to Worm.
right.
And Worm is the name of their like spaceship, if I remember right.
Hmm.
So
So the coil engine is
the coil engine is a new. It's
New
like
technology.
Worm Mark II is the coil engine,
Right.
and that's as far as I've gotten. The coil, I'm kind of getting a Star Trek like vibe with the engine, right? So it might be that like the coil engine is the main source of power, and there might be a story revolving around it, and then it's a sequel to Worm.
I'd play this. This sounds fine. Sublime Epiphany.
That's like one of those like Namco like RPGs, right?
Yeah.
With like
Yeah.
really like very baroque art, but super anime faces, and like a really, really complicated like battle system and narrative that, unless you specifically like that type of Namco RPG, you are never ever going to look at or think about it.
You'd be like, I guess these are some character designs.
I was thinking like a Life is Strange style, like emotional game about a current youth, like a Gen Z person who just realized the guy from Sublime has been dead for a long time.
Oh, no.
The guy from Sublime's been dead for a long time.
I didn't know that.
Do you not
either.
know that?
I didn't know that.
Wait, maybe I did know that.
I'm always not always thinking about how much I fucking hate Sublime.
The lead singer of Sublime died before they became big.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Santa Ria is a posthumous single.
That is
Wow.
horrible because because he didn't die early enough for me to not ever have heard Santeria, right? So
Yeah.
that's like one of those things. If you had a time machine, and it's like you can go back and kill Hitler. Now I'm gonna go back and kill the guy from Sublime slightly earlier.
What I Got, also a posthumous single.
Man,
That is insane.
Remember that.
I had no idea.
that is a sublime epiphany. I
Okay,
have
we
to
just
say.
had
We just had a Sublime Epiphany.
There you go.
Moving on, Simian Spirit Guide.
Ooh, I like this one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Last episode, the Spook Dracula, we talked about ghosts in games, right?
Yes.
I will say that just full disclosure, we are recording this on Halloween.
It's true.
2024.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you. So please read the name of the game again.
Simian Spirit Guide. I have them all in chat.
Yeah, this feels somehow feels too much to me like a very Akira Toriyama influenced arcade game where you have a ghost and you're leading a character around a maze and through various zones, but I don't love the idea. It's just what immediately came to mind.
So when you said that, what I had in mind is you're someone and you have a Simian Spirit Guide, and it's an arcade style game, and the Simian Spirit Guide is kind of floating, doing its own thing, and there is a button that any time lets you swap places with him, like instantly. So there's something there.
Yeah, that's a mechanic.
I could have imagined actually more like those not Gyromite. What's the one with the cop that's walking or whatever? Gumshoe?
Oh, that's Gumshoe. Yeah.
Right, so kind of a gumshoe thing, right? But you know, like all arcade games, sometimes used to have these little like attract modes. And in this one, right, the character like to go to the zoo to see their favorite monkey, right? But then that monkey passes away due to old age, and then the person's so upset they keep trying to commit suicide, but now you control the ghost of their favorite monkey, and you're trying to stop them from like falling off buildings and things like that as they walk through the levels.
It's like a tulip type thing.
Yeah, like that. You're just like flying around as a, but you could only use your monkey powers, right? So it's all stuff like peeling a banana so they slip and like fall before they like, you know, things like that. It has to be monkey power based.
I'm gonna dial it back a little bit and just say that the person is accident prone, not that they're trying to commit suicide actively, so that we can get past the SRB.
But you
that's
know,
how
those
we'll
like
localize it for you.
Those old Japanese arcade games often had like a track where we're like, wait, what's going on? It's like a really strange story, and you're like, okay, I guess. Like that's what I'm imagining. Like very poorly translated by like, you know, Tekken or someone like that.
Next is Mass Hysteria.
Mass Hysteria seems like a crowd simulator game.
Oh, sure.
That's maybe a little on the nose, but I always thought, and maybe there is such a game, I always thought it would be cool to have a game where there's like, I think I was calling it, did I make this up or was this something that I stole? But zombies versus unicorns, and zombies could turn humans into zombies, but unicorns could turn them back into humans. And there are like very few unicorns and a lot of zombies. And the goal is to turn everyone back into a human. Anyway, not that, but something where there's big crowd simulations and you're trying to guide them to safety or not, because it's a sim, so you know you can be whatever kind of weirdo you want to be.
Moving on, Waste Not.
Oh, that's just a Munchmobile by SNK for the arcade, where you're a car with arms and you pick up trash off the side of the road to eat it, but then you also have to throw it in a trash can or you lose your points.
That's exactly correct.
That sounds correct.
Is what that is. Nemesis of Reason.
Oh, this is a Gradius sequel, right?
Oh,
I was thinking this was also a Commodore 64 game, but
Isn't Gradius Nemesis in the UK?
Gradius was Nemesis in North America, actually. I believe that's what it is. It wasn't until later it became Gradius, because it's the same way that Salamander became Life Force when it was translated.
well, I guess the Nemesis of Reason would be the Gradius Tactics game.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, actually. Like Operation Chocolate, whatever it's called for our type.
Yeah.
love it.
Operation Chocolate's the second one.
Sunfall.
This is like a AAA RPG. No, not RPG. It's a AAA action game with RPG elements in an open world, and it's just like it's got kind of a lot of generic characters, and a whole lot of money was spent on it, but then it got
Is it
shut.
fantasy or sci-fi?
It's got a little of both. It's got a little of both. It's one of those games where they just couldn't.
Got to get all the audiences.
Yeah, they couldn't pick a lane, and then it wound up flopping, and then like 10 years later, people were like, there was actually some interesting stuff in here if you really look.
10 years later on the Insert Credit Show.
That's right, exactly.
A Sword of Feast and Famine.
Nice.
I think dual wield swords.
Right, one's feast, one's famine.
Cool.
Those are their names. They talk to you. They have nothing to do with feast or famine. It's just their names. But
your name is Dante.
But there is sort of a like there's some kind of mechanic that I need to workshop here where it's maybe one of them's red, one of them's blue, and you have to carefully balance, and the bosses are kind of like changing colors and stuff like that, and you have to really carefully strategize when to feast and when to famine.
It could just be Silhouette Mirage, where when you are going to the right, it's blue. When you're going to the left, it's red. And there are blue and red enemies, and they, you have to fight the opposite one. I think that would work
I'm
fine.
picturing some kind of growth and decay mechanic with the swords.
Yeah, I thought some sort of kind of like a diner dash thing where like you're running, or like you have like a bunch of customers, let's say, and you hit them with the feast sword, and you could like, I'm filling up, and if they get too fat, you have to hit them with the famine sword to get them back down.
Sure.
So that everybody, by the time they leave the shop, they're the exact size that they want to be.
Yeah, so it's like you're a tavern / blacksmith shop in an RPG is the premise, and you have to outfit them with the right weaponry and the right food to make them perfectly trimmed to go out into the
That's not
dungeon.
bad. I like that. Otterball Antics.
Super Monkey Ball.
Otter Ball?
Otters, yes.
It's like otters.
It's Super
Correct.
Monkey Ball with an otter inside.
Pretty much. That sounds right.
I went Spectrum, not 64. I went Spectrum. I think something about Antics being on there.
Antics is a pretty spectrumy word. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's a clone of Chaos Ball.
Chaos Orb. Yeah, definitely.
Like a bad clone that came with a magazine or something.
Yeah, they wanted one for kids. They were like, Chaos Orb is so popular, but only edgy teens and adults are.
We put a dragon in it. We can't use that.
Yeah, we got to do a kids version.
No one thought that Chaos Orb could run correctly on the Spectrum, but Otterball almost proved that right.
Funnily enough, does not run well on the Switch. This final one is a proper noun, so go nuts. Thraxamundar.
Thraxamundar is like a medieval muscle-bound, long-haired guy who dispatches enemies, but he talks like a surfer dude.
But and it's like not funny. Like they're trying to be funny.
They were trying, but they really failed.
Like
these are people who saw Bill and Ted and thought these guys are guys I should be like.
Yeah. It was
I think it's more
Pauly
of
Shore.
Just a modern person who isn't funny, and this is by the way, like a retro throwback kind of game, but like the resolutions are wrong and stuff like that. Like it doesn't actually look old, but they think it does.
5 resolution clashes.
It says it's 8-bit, but it's clearly like a full
there's
color
like
palette.
there's like 128 colors, and it says 8-bit on it. And the scrolling is inconsistent and stuff like that, and it's
there's particle effects that are like the default Unity setting.
Yeah. It's one of those.
I like that. Well, that is our lightning round. I'm sorry, that game is already out on limited runs, so pick up Thraxamundar today because it's only going up, everybody. Get it on eBay. That is our lightning round. I am going to give this one to Brandon because I thought Sunfall was exactly correct. And
okay.
That card is really ruining Standard right now. So that's our show, everybody. Do you have any recommendations, anything we want to plug, any books we've recently written?
I'll go first really quick, which I don't remember if I've already recommended UFO 50, but I'm still having a really good time with UFO 50. Maybe that goes without saying, but it's basically the only game I've played in the last 3 weeks. I've been savoring it very much on purpose. I'm only on the 23rd game chronologically.
Do you have a favorite so far?
I don't know if like favorite's the word, but I've had a couple obsessive emotions. Nice. So the two that I spent the most time on are Magic Garden, which is it plays like a snake style game, but kind of with like a Pac-Man mechanic of turning things into edibles that are chasing you. And I spent a ton of time on that. And then another one's called Velgris, I believe. And that's you're a girl in space with a gun, like just vertically climbing a roguelike platformer thing. I really like that one. But the overall package is really the thing. I think it does a really good job of evoking things that I really value. Two things. One of them is this weird console finally has an emulator. Let's spend a weekend loading every ROM and just seeing what this thing's all about. Like I haven't had that in a long time. So it scratched that itch. But the other itch that it scratches for me is the fantasy of having someone really cool in my life who knows like the whole MSX library and is recommending me like 20 actually interesting MSX games. That's not a real thing. I fantasized about that with the Amiga as well. That's not a thing. There's no one cool that makes like good Amiga lists.
Blasted.
Well, give me some time.
Or there's no good Amiga games. It's one of those two. I can't tell.
Hey, there's good Amiga games, which means that we have to hit the sensible world of soccer klaxon. Because I've mentioned every episode I'm on. So there you go.
Everybody
well done.
drink. He mentioned it.
You made me say it. You made me say it. I'm going to recommend 2 things. So the first thing I'd recommend is you can change your shower head. It's really, really easy. You don't need any tools, basically. So if you have a disgusting shower head, just replace it. And when you do that, you might say to yourself, actually, my whole shower thing drips, right? Don't bother getting a plumber. You can replace the shower cartridge. The only thing that you're going to have to do is two things that are really important. Is see when you get the Allen key and unscrew the thing, make sure that you've got any CLR or whatever it is to get rid of that calcium buildup. And then when you've taken the whole unit off, you're going to say to yourself, I cannot get this bolt holding the cartridge in off. And you're going to look online and it's going to say, saw it, tap it, do this, use CLR, use WD, ignore it all. Go to Home Depot and buy a pipe clamp that fits it, right? And that's only going to cost you like $2. Put it over it, right? Tighten it as much as possible. Then just tap out the hammer. The thing just rolls right off at that point. It's so cheap and it's so easy. And you can replace your shower cartridge perfectly. So that's my number one tip. My number two tip is if you found it helpful, why don't you buy my book? You just have to go on Amazon and you check every game I've finished. That's how you have to type in, or my name, Mathew Kumar, 1T, Kumar, and then it'll come up. You can buy it. You can buy it in a Kindle from there, right? If you just want the download, you don't want to waste paper. You can buy it as a friggin' paperback that looks beautiful. And if you don't want to do either of those things, you don't want to give it to Jeff Bezos, which I completely understand. We're all unsubscribing from the Washington Post. You could just go to coffee, I guess. Coffee.
I don't know.
I think.
Kofi, you can get Kofi, right? And just type
There
my
will
name
be a
in.
link in the show notes.
Type my name in, and you can buy an EPUB or PDF. You can also buy my zines. You can support me for just $1 a month, and you can get those articles that we've talked about. God, and you'll say to yourself, not only am I fucking sparkling clean from my beautiful shower head that I got replaced pure easy because he told me everything, I'm also able to read this book. That's what you'll say. And you'll be in bed, right? You'll be so clean because you've just had a shower. You'll be in bed tucked. Imagine this. I'm asking everybody.
I've heard people say that.
You'll be tucked in bed, right, in your PJs. You'll be so nice and clean smell. You maybe a nice wee cup of sleepy time tea, the one with the bear, right?
Yeah,
And you're drinking the sleepy time tea and you open my book and you just flick to a random one and you go, oh, look, I could read this article about an old Spectrum game, or I could read this one about a AAA game. I'm going to pick one, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to go to bed feeling nice, clean, smelling good, and, I've engaged with a wee bit of criticism that doesn't usually exist. Subjective, admittedly.
Wait, your criticism is subjective?
It's very
That
subjective.
doesn't really sound like ethical journalism.
Can I cancel my...
Yeah.
I'm gonna save my other recommendation for next week because it's also a book. So you'll just have to wait for that one. But let's see. I'll recommend. Someone was talking about city pop and stuff and how they were just listening to Maria Takeuchi and things and just whatever default came up on YouTube. I should make a little nice little playlist. I'll think about doing that. But for now, check out Mariko Tone, her song Purple Rose. That's really cool if you like big hot tunes. And I also wanted to just share a little thing from yesterday. There are certain turns of phrase that are only really possible with a non-native English speaker, and there was a really good one yesterday where we went to a thrift store, and then the lot got, as far as we thought, locked. Like the bars came across the lot, and we're like, how do we get out of here? And so I went and talked to the security guard, and I was like, it's locked. And he said, no, there's no way it's locked. And we're like, well, but the chain's across. And he's like, oh, no, that's nothing. Just take it out, open it up, and then once you pass away, put it back how it was. And he,
You have to
of course,
die?
He of course meant once I pass through the gate and leave, I should put it back how it was. But he was just so confidently, once you pass away. I loved it. And I had to share that delightful experience with you. So there you go. Yeah.
Lovely.
Big ups to that guy. Now that I'm a ghost, I put it all together.
Simian Spirit Guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Simian Spirit Guide here for us.
That's me.
Well, that's going to do it. If you enjoyed this episode of Insert Credit, please rate and review our show wherever and however you can. You can also support us directly with your donations at patreon.com/insertcredit. If you'd like to sponsor our show with an advertisement or personal message, you can contact us at show@insertcredit.com. You can also join our community at forums.insertcredit.com or find us on youtube.com/insertcreditshow. This episode, in fact, may feature video of the panel speaking, so
We'll see.
check it out. We're gonna try some stuff going forward on the YouTube channel. I do that work and I'm very proud of it. This week's Horrible Buzzer is by Key Gray. Send in your horrible buzzers and maybe we'll use them on air. Go check out Every Game I Finished by Mathew Kumar, Demon School by Brandon Sheffield and Necrosoft, and the Video Game History Foundation founded by one Mr. Frank Cifaldi. This episode is edited by me with music by Kurt Feldman. I'm Esper Quinn.
I'm Frank Cifaldi.
I'm Brandon Sheffield.
I was Mathew Kumar.
And the selfish deed is not freedom.
Is this 362?
I believe so. Oh God, I might have said 361 like multiple times in this episode.
You're going to have to dub yourself in.
Yeah, I can do anything I need. I can put in whole other jokes if I want.